Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we're bringing you an excerpt from Mark Feygin's stream that he dedicated to the Congress of Free Russia, which occurred between 31st of August and 2nd of September this year in Lithuania, Vilnius. This translation is done by Lana. Enjoy.
In the announcement of this video, what I meant was that this discussion would be held in style of village-style New Vasuki, because Congress, which was called before Forum of Free Russia, now look like obvious village event New Vasuki. As you can see, along with the main program of Congress, they managed to play chess as well. I got it. Kasparov is always sportsman, first and lastly politician. Over 40 years, chess is his main business. He achieved all possible rewards in this sport. He is a sportsman. My problem with him is that he reflected his respectful position in sport on politics. I made many comments on this. Kasparov, best political experience, which he is very proud of, is in Communist Party. He really was a big deal member of Communist Party, trying to reach a chair in Central Committee of Young Communists. Of course, he got chances. Of course, he was a star. He was a champion. But his previous experience skills he uses now in Russian opposition, besides the fact he created numerous political organizations, then he dropped them. And today he is on this finish line with this political career, and I guess he's almost 70, and that's his farewell song. And the song is this Congress in Vilnius, which has political agenda without any real action plan. Action plan was another Russian opposition initiated. Needless to repeat, I'm not going to talk about Kasparov. Nothing is personal. Everyone has a point of view, but it's time to change the narrative. I was a member in Solidarity for a short period of time in committee. Then I was invited to Forum Free Russia and left after a couple of years because of complete uselessness with no perspectives. I realized all these people could create only imitation of political activities against regime. This is only purpose of their work. They obsessed with defining others people's destiny, not their own, but others. And that's the only reason to pursue the leadership. Plus, they cannot afford any competition. As if we will talk about deep meaning of this opposition, that would conclude in only one question. Could we destroy regime any other way besides violence? Me and many others always said that it's impossible. There is no historical or political ground for it. It runs pretty long time. Kasparov proclaimed regime could not be removed only by war or military conflict, maybe by election, peaceful strikes, or waiting for maybe a right moment. This is the main thought of Kasparov's organization. Let's wait, it will dissolve by itself. How it happened? The Western world is strong enough, it will create circumstances, and regime collapse, and Putin die, and we don't have to do anything. That's the whole idea of this opposition, primarily left liberals, which Kasparov's at the end. The reason we pay attention specifically to Kasparov, even though there is many other decent representatives participated in Vilnius Congress, because as once Napoleon said, an army of sheep led by a lion is better than an army of lions led by a sheep. So unfortunately, the idea of no violence united all these organizations. There is no need for them to take responsibility or take any risk or part in this war against the regime. But to deny that this is only one solution based on your own fears of consequences is simply a lie and political crime in the face of their supporters. Political crime, of course. It runs pretty long time before the war, where we could forgive and respectfully understand their perception of reality. But today it's unacceptable. And the fact that some combatants who are ready to oppose regime and looking for political legislation prove that there is a necessity for radical measures. As these 6 months of war created unprecedented situation, showing that regime is threat for not only whole world but for Russia itself. There is a price for this war, and for Ukrainians and for Russians. Exceptional situation requires exceptional measures. Ponomarev declared that clearly maybe he wasn't the first one to say it, but he did it bold enough to be heard. And this is important. And by the way, during time on YouTube, I've heard a lot of criticism that we just talk, visited forums, meet on some parties, online, offline, saying the same thing, when you will act at with some results. It was a reference to serious actions instead of some peaceful demonstration with the flowers or the demonstration with the lamps. I was never part of it. I was always against that, never believe in smart election, but I always leave the right for opposition to have variety of streams. Today is completely different situation. We have no choice but accept the burden of realization that regime could fall only in a result of military conflict. Peaceful resignation or transfer of power do not exist. This new realization requires subjective selection among supporters of opposition, of those who could provide such radical tools. As a result of this, Ponomarev initiated a union with National Republican Army, which for now is a complete phantom. No one sees it. No one knows about it. Moreover, some says it's creation of FSB or GRU. No one knows, but no one could prove wrong. It is what it is. Unfortunately, situation today is like National Republican Army and Legion Free Russia and third organization who signed Irpin Declaration, Russian Volunteers Corps. This is now a union of people who participate in battles, yes. They are Russian citizens who claim to fight with the regime and help Ukraine. Their intentions could reach effective results only with support of majority of Russian society. The Russian questions, tasks, very simple. Destroy regime. We have no idea how it goes for now. We cannot predict. Yes, they would need majority of Russian society. We discussed it with Gutkov. There are many questions about what actions should be done right away. Should they just fight with Ukraine or should they just proceed to Russia in order to connect with some of other combatants and provoke unrest in Russia itself? We could not say for sure what happened now today. We don't know what's going on in Russia today. Does underground exist or not? For now, for the moment, we see disconnected singles. They obviously prefer radical ways of destroying of Putin regime, which is realistic, but they are not united. They have no orders, no committee. And they have no political agenda. Even on this Congress, which is supposed to be a round table, representatives admitted that they are conservatives, they are right-wing traditionalists. And that means that as liberals don't have a chance to play active part in this new formation, but these conservatives, they may be not capable to overcome the idea of no violence and ideologically to overcome that respect to human life, etc., etc. But the war is about fight and to kill. We cannot change it. If they should realize that there is no way back, if they take a path of a war, they want to avoid any possible risks. Well, to win, you have to risk loss. That's the point. No matter who would lead, Ponomaryov or anyone else, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who will do what. This is second question. The most important that this is alternative way in majority of opposition, and that's important. There is actually only two parties, both based in Vilnius. One is the Congress of Free Russia, and around FBK, who seeks for peaceful solutions. But we shouldn't be hard on them, but respectful, especially to their leader, Navalny, who imprisoned. And that's explained a lot. But people in Russia and opposition, they should respect that. Kasparov didn't follow him. He is not so brave to sacrifice his freedom. Even though I personally think it's insane move Navalny did. He returned to Russia last year straight to a prison. Still, it is an act of bravery, almost suicide. Because today's Russia, especially during the war, exercise openly terror towards any opposition. So the behavior of Yashin and Navalny is equal to human sacrifice. We can criticize their choices, but we should respect them. My personal opinion is being in prison cannot bring any results or ability to fight and continue activities in opposition. Completely useless. In order to continue fight with effective results, you should be outside of the country, especially a state like Russia. Back to Congress of Free Russia with Kasparov. This kind of organization has no political or any future. They care to settle in Europe and create livable space for good Russians. Kasparov tried to represent all Russian immigration, but it won't happen. He represents only several members in his group. Participants of this event were mostly from Belarus, because no one came from Russia. Yeah, it's impossible. And Russian immigration, in general, it's not so united. So they just come to this Vilnius forum by their own expenses and with no perspectives. Mostly such events happen annually or twice a year, but nothing happened there, literally nothing. They convince new immigrants to settle in Western world and look for better opportunities for themselves. Unlike FBK, which does investigations, help their supporters in Russia with documentation, help with visas, paying penalties, etc. And there is a third subject, more radical, which claims that final goal is collapse of Putin regime. It's more dangerous, of course, but it talks reality, and today it's language of a war. Because during the war, it would be an illusion to discuss smart election or any legal processes and avoiding any involvement in politics in Russia, as Kasparov and his supporters do. And anyone understands that during the war, there is no election or forums or any formalities. People who have control of legislation in Russia selected based on their loyalty on different levels, like snitching for Lubyanka. So if it has a chance to succeed, then neither this should be organization claiming a war the only way to get rid of regime, or some kind of union of all three directions in Russian immigration. We cannot exclude this option. I mentioned it many times before. We can invite independent company from USA or Japan, anywhere else, to manage this legal distant election inside Russian opposition and immigration. Then we could formate sort of pre-parliament agency. Not the executive one, but representative, which would represent groups of Russians in Russia, outside of Russia, immigrations, and this new organization with the plan of military overthrow of state power. I would like to remind you that there are examples in such attempts of election in our history, tragic ones, but still experience. In the first wave of immigration and partially in the second wave, when Kerensky tried to organize it with his socialists through America, in first wave of immigration, there are all three directions. As they went through civil war, like ROS, Association of Officers and Soldiers, participated in White Army fighting communists in South Russia with Denikin, or from Russian army of Wrangel. Despite their tragic end, that kind of opposition existed. UGPU killed all leaders one by one. Miller was abducted and suffocated in trunk of a car. But this is a fact that political terror against opponents always existed in Russia, and it never changed. The second wave of immigration was people who left with Germans and settled in Europe. They were covered by Western occupation program and avoid being sent back to Russia. Those people organized few associations which tried to save this union of fighting communism. It was ineffectively. As with the beginning of Cold War and the crisis in Korea, etc., Western world adopted policy of containment, where two worlds could coexist peacefully, even continuing to be in opposition. After collapse of Soviet Union as a result of Cold War, there was no need anymore in such organization. Everyone decided that that's the end of the story. As the famous Fukuyama said, every end is a beginning. So now we are in a way more desperate situation than ever. Worse than in times of Cold War, because Soviet Russia respects rules, but now Moscow broke all unspoken rules not to engage in a real war in Europe, which was always taboo. From this point of view, perspective of military response from partisans movement and from military group in Ukraine is higher than during times of Cold War in 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s. Because nowadays Moscow broke all the rules. This war opened portal to hell for everyone. Now it's a game of free forces. It's not like in chess game with pre-planned agenda when collective West is against isolated Moscow. This game now has no rules when all means are good, and Moscow proved that it could go too far up to nuclear blackmail, not even mention political murders and war in Ukraine. With all that said, military-oriented opposition is just a part of whole movement. Despite criticism of Vilnius Congress, this is not about exclusion or competition, but it's about union of all the political streams. So luck would be on the side of the platform which aims reorganization of life in Russia, not outside. In this sense, military opposition has way more chances than others. Even though there is a lot of criticism, mistrust to Ponomarev, criticism to Ukrainian government, which mistrusts all Russian opposition, etc. At the end of the day, the process has begun, because the war, of course, and all the consequences it brought, world is changing. New arguments, new polarities, new realities appeared. Nothing will be the same anymore. The present circumstances, new military opposition is a well-forgotten old way with the real perspective. I describe my thoughts in short. Maybe many of you won't agree with my analysis. Then I feel importance of this subject.
Но мне важно было высказаться на эту тему, потому что я о ней много раз говорил, но суммировать это необходимо.